Kamala Harris just had a train wreck of an interview which left everyone, even her fans, if she still has any, wondering how she's still in the game. I mean, it shouldn't even be up for debate on who we should be the winner right now. Let's break down the cringeworthy moments, because if you thought that Kamala Harris was ready for 2024, you might want to reconsider after this disaster of a debate.
President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race in a stunning letter that was just released moments ago by his campaign on X.
After a historic race for president upended just a few weeks ago with President Biden withdrawing after his last debate, Donald Trump now is up against Vice President Kamala Harris, the one person who we never got to see do any work during the Joe Biden administration. At one point, people even thought she was missing. Now remember, Harris's biggest challenge was showing she could match Donald Trump's combative, take-no-prisoners attitude. But instead of strong retorts, Harris doubled down on outdated talking points that make her sound more like she's stuck in 2021 than someone ready to take on the Oval Office. Speaking of 2021, remember when the government, which she was vice president of, forced the people to take vaccines, which was yet to prove ineffective, for the coronavirus? Well, look what she's talking about now.
And America's strength, one of the attributes of our progress has been the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. And that's what we're seeing happen, and it has happened.
Really, Kamala? Now that's what you call being a hypocrite. It's like every time Harris opens her mouth, she's trying to outdo herself in speaking nonsense. Just a few weeks ago, the 2024 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris took place on September 10th, 2024. The debate was held at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia and lasted for about 90 minutes. Sure, it started off being very calm, but Harris quickly ended up fumbling every step of the way. And she continued to keep fumbling throughout her latest presidential interview with Fox News anchor Bret Baier. Harris thought it'd be a good idea for her to sit down with Baier, a guy known for not pulling any punches during his interviews.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
people
have
become
become. But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
In fact, she was 15 minutes late for the interview. Now, was that arrogant or wildly overconfident? In any case, it wasn't very punctual for someone who's trying to be president. From the moment the interview began, it was clear that Harris was in for a rough ride. The vice president's strategy was obvious. She decided not to answer any of Bret Baier's questions, and that forced Bret Baier to interrupt her so that she could say what she loves to say, which was, "Let me finish." Baier interrupted her 38 times in just 20 minutes, which just shows how much she was lacking with her responses. It got to a point where she had to plead with him.
Practically within hours of taking the oath was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish.
Just from this alone, you can see how Bret has to literally answer the questions he asked Kamala Harris because she can't come up with responses. After all, how can there be responses from her for something she has no knowledge about? And then came some of the hard-hitting questions involving the current president of the United States, Joe Biden. And it definitely was funny trying to see her come up with answers in her head. Given how she's trying to be different, was Harris trying to distance herself from Biden? Well, she sure tried. Baier hit her hard with questions about her role in the Biden administration, particularly about immigration and border security, two areas where the Biden administration has been failing. And do you know what she said?
I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of... Yes. Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency.
She tried to pull the old "I'm not Joe Biden" card. She was desperately trying to assure that she'd be different when she knows she won't be, as a lot of her policies that she's planning on implementing are, more or less, almost identical to Joe Biden. And we can't wait to get into the questions of immigration and border security that Bret asked, because those answers would make you wonder how she even got to be a politician in the first place. But before that, let's talk about the endorsements she kept bringing up over and over again.
Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one that he is unfit to serve.
We get it, Kamala, you've got some Republicans backing you up. But do you need to drop that fact every time you feel cornered? It's almost like she's saying, hey, even some of Trump's people like me. Which, to be honest, is a weird flex when you're trying to be progressive in your leadership style. And it's definitely not the brag she thinks it is.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point.
Yeah, let's just get to the point. Madam Vice President, when Brett asked the question about the estimated number of illegal immigrants the administration she was vice president of has released into the country over the last 3.5 years, Harris's answer was a special one indeed. Instead of giving a direct answer, which she should have known, she started talking about how it's a topic of discussion and how the immigration system needs to be repaired.
Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
And who do you think broke it? By the way, for anyone who wants the answer to how many illegal immigrants entered the country during the last 3.5 years, it's a rough estimate of 6 million people. That's a record high during the last 7 years, which should say a lot about how she was while in power. The fact is, border security has been on an all-time low, and illegal immigrants have been on an all-time high during the last few years, which has resulted in many murders of loved ones across the country. Bayer even asked about her 2019 stance that border crossings should be decriminalized. This is one of several issues where the vice president has been accused of flip-flopping. But instead of addressing these issues, Harris, as always, started blaming Trump for some reason.
But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
Did Harris really avoid answering the tough questions? Oh, you bet. One of the questions which Bayer pressed hard on Harris was why Trump is still leading her in some swing states despite all the trash she's thrown at him. And her response?
This is an election for President of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but...
So basically, elections are hard and America is complicated. That was a good dodge. Instead of giving a factually incorrect response as to why she's losing, Bayer even baited her with the, "Are they stupid?" which Harris was quick to jump in with a classic politician's way of not answering the question.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people.
That translates to, she had no idea how to defend her position, so she went with the let's not insult the voters routine. It was a pretty weak attempt at sounding gracious while avoiding the real issue as to why she's struggling to win over voters. And don't even get me started on that out-of-context Trump clip. Bayer tried to call Harris out on Trump's remarks about Democrats being the enemy within, but the wrong clip played.
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
That was the question that we asked him.
It was a rare Fox News mix-up. Instead of taking advantage of Bayer's fumble, Harris just kind of pushed through a weak correction. It was like watching someone trip over their own feet in slow motion, and it was painfully awkward. Harris even deflected questions regarding Biden's mental state. While calling out Trump for being unstable and misguided, Bayer came back at her with how in many interviews she said that Joe Biden was always on top of his game. Does that look like someone who's always on top of his game? Biden looks like a runaway old dementia patient who just happened to come across this press conference. Now, when further pressed on this issue, Harris's response was quite interesting.
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
Well, she's right. Joe Biden is no longer running for presidency and Donald Trump is. But according to her, it's all right for someone old like Joe Biden to be the president while unstable. But when someone from the opposition tries to do the same thing, that's when she had a problem with it. What a classic case of being a hypocrite. But surely Harris handled the foreign policy questions better, right? Of course she did, if you're completely delusional. Bayer questioned her about Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, and Harris once again gave us a reason as to why she isn't ready to be president. Harris once again tried to put all of the blame on Trump.
The estimates
and then
in billions
it was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go towards
that
the Iran regime.
That we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention...
I mean, sure, the guy had his fair share of mistakes, but Harris conveniently ignored the fact that Obama's original deal wasn't exactly perfect either. In her world, everything bad in foreign policy is Trump's fault, even though Trump's not been in office since he lost the last election. And anything slightly positive? Well, that's all because of the Biden administration, obviously. Harris didn't provide any bold new strategies either for handling Iran, just a whole lot of finger-pointing.
On the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel...
who look at what the administration did.
And here's the twist for you. Harris genuinely believes she came out looking strong. Yes, after getting talked over 38 times, dodging questions like they were bullets in the Matrix, and awkwardly defending her administration's failures, Harris probably walked off that set thinking she nailed it. Maybe it's because she managed to not directly insult half of America. The bar is pretty low, but hey, at least she didn't trip on it. If this interview was meant to showcase Harris's ability to stand up to tough questions, it failed. Immensely. Instead of coming across as a confident leader ready to take on the next election, she looked like someone desperately trying to hang on to her political career by any means necessary. At this point, she's hoping for a handful of Republican endorsements to save her. But let's be real, that's not going to cut it when you're aiming to become the leader of the world's most powerful nation. So, where does this leave us? Harris clearly wants to be seen as a new kind of leader, one who can unite the country and stand up to her opponents. But based on this interview, she's got a long way to go. If you can't even hold your own against Brett Bayer, how are you going to handle the rest of the world? What are your thoughts on all of this? And do you think Kamala Harris is fit to be the next president? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below, as we're always open for discussions. If you've enjoyed watching this video, do make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on our future videos.